TSUGUKIT Manual. This video is explaining the Kintsugi manual for Kintsugi beginners using TSUGUKIT by Tokyo Kintsugi Workshop, TSUGUTSUGU. What is Kintsugi? Kintsugi is a Japanese traditional repairing technique for broken ceramics using natural ingredients such as urushi. By highlighting and mending scars and cracks of the ceramics and turning them into art, we can use them for a longer period of time and with love. What is urushi? Urushi is extracted from the urushi tree. The main chemical compound is urushiol, and it has an adhesive characteristic. It takes about 15 years from when the tree is planted until you can extract urushi from the tree by scratching. Urushi is a very scarce resource. Only 200 milliliters of urushi can be extracted from one tree. Keep the raw urushi in a cool and dark place, such as a refrigerator, to avoid exposure to high temperature and sunlight, especially during the summer. For urushi to harden, the ideal temperature is 20 to 30 degrees Celsius, which is 68 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and the ideal humidity is 70% to 85%. Therefore, before starting Kintsugi, set up an Urushi box at home and keep the repairing items within the Urushi box while doing Kintsugi. How to set up an Urushi box. For urushi to harden, the ideal temperature is 20 to 30 degrees Celsius, which is 68 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and the ideal humidity is 70% to 85%. Put the box in a warm place, spread out a plastic sheet under the wet towel, and close the box to keep in the humidity. Keep the wet towel off from the repairing part. If your area is in a dry season, to keep the humidity high, you can put a plastic bag over the urushi box. Do not cover the box completely to avoid raising the humidity too high. Outfit for Kintsugi. Raw urushi is a natural product, and it may cause skin irritation upon skin contact. When you do Kintsugi, wear rubber gloves and long sleeves to protect your skin, and tie your hair back. If the raw urushi gets on your skin, immediately wipe it off with oil. Wash well with soap and rinse it off. The best oil to be used is rapeseed or canola oil, but otherwise vegetable oil or olive oil can be used. Discontinue use and ask a doctor if your skin becomes irritated. Kintsugi procedures. Step 1. Pre-treatment. Wash the plate or item to rinse off any oil or salt and dry well. Otherwise, the urushi would not harden well. Chamfer, which means filing the edge of the broken items lightly with sandpaper. Do not polish the broken surface in order to keep the surface rough so that the broken parts are integrated and stuck together better. File the edges at about a 45-degree angle and make sure to file the entire edges and for all the broken pieces. Filing will be done with a sandpaper in the Kintsugi kit, but diamond file is also recommended. Once all the broken pieces are filed, let's match the pieces together. As long as there is a small gap, it's okay. For the chipped area, cut the sandpaper in small pieces, fold it into 3 to harden. If the chipped area has a glaze, grind it with the sandpaper to make scars. A ceramic glaze is a thin, impervious, shiny glass coating on a ceramic ware. Ceramic glaze is hard, and it is difficult to remove them completely with sandpaper, but it is better to make scars so that urushi can stick better. Step 2. How to make Mugi Urushi. If your plate or item is unglazed and has a rough surface that can easily absorb stains, cover the surrounding area with masking tape to protect it from being stained during Kintsugi process. Not necessary for glazed items. You should cut and prepare the masking tapes before sticking the broken pieces together. Peel off the protective film from the palette. Now, we will make Mugi Urushi for broken items or deep cracks that are more than 1 mm in depth. Put cake flour on the palette using a spoon. Put water on it little by little using the dropper and knead until it becomes the texture of dough. A spoonful of cake flour suffices for a regular broken plate. It became the texture of dough now. Now, we will be using urushi, so please wear your rubber gloves. Now, we will add the raw urushi. Add raw urushi a little more than the volume of the dough and knead the mixture with a spatula until it becomes similar to the texture of chewed gum that can be stretched out. It will be difficult to find the right amount of raw urushi in the beginning. Add the raw urushi little by little until long elastic strands are formed. Mugi urushi can be used up to 1 week if it is sealed in a plastic wrap to keep the oxygen out and refrigerated. Even within 1 week, if the mugi urushi solidifies, please throw it away. Step 2a. Sticking pieces together. Now, we will be applying this natural adhesive, mugi urushi, to the broken surface. Sticking pieces together precedes filling chipped areas. Apply mugi urushi on both sides of the cracks thoroughly with a bamboo spatula and stick the pieces together. Apply mugi urushi thinly. The mugi urushi should come out a little from the cracks when stuck together. Once mugi urushi is applied to both surfaces of the broken pieces, stick the pieces together. Align the pieces so that they become the original shape. Put pressure from both sides so the mugi urushi would tightly stick together. Apply masking tape on both sides of the crack, very tightly so that the pieces do not shift later. When applying the masking tape, touch through the masking tape and make sure there is no gap. Especially make sure there is no gap at the rims. If there is a small amount of mugi urushi that had come out, you may not notice a gap when touching through the masking tape. Try not to touch mugi urushi. Check if there is no gap between pieces by touching with a clean bamboo spatula or utility knife. It would take time for this mugi urushi to completely harden. Leave the item in the urushi box for at least 1 week. Place the item so that the stuck surface is perpendicular to the floor to prevent from shifting later. One week later. When it has completely hardened, take off the masking tape and scrape off the extra Mugi Urushi with a utility knife. If the Mugi Urushi is not completely hardened while scraping off the excessive Mugi Urushi, it means that it has not been completely dried yet. Once you have removed the excessive Mugi Urushi with the utility knife, put it into the Urushi box again and leave it for more than 1 week. It is difficult to use utility knife inside the cup. If you have it at home, you can also use chisel instead. Step 2B. Filling the chipped areas. Mask around the chipped area if needed. If the item is both broken apart and chipped, start by putting the pieces together. A putty called kokso will be made for over 1 mm of deep chipped areas. Mugi Urushi for sticking pieces together will be used. Place Mugi Urushi, wood powder, polishing powder in 1:1:1 ratio on the palette using a spoon and knead together. Mix both wood powder and polishing powder little by little to the Mugi Urushi. Kokso becomes the filler of the chipped area. Add powder to the mixture until the powder can no longer dissolve, and mix until it hardens to the consistency of a hard clay. Now, kokso is made. Kokso can be used up to 1 week if it is sealed in a plastic wrap to keep the oxygen out and refrigerated. Even within 1 week, if the kokso solidifies, you can still use the inner soft part, but throw away the rest. Fill the chipped area little by little with kokso using the bamboo spatula. If you fill more than 0.5 to 1 mm, it will take too long to harden. Wipe the kokso off the bamboo spatula often and keep it clean. Otherwise, the kokso will stick on the bamboo spatula. Plastic wrap helps create a supporting wall when filling chipped areas. You can also push the kokso over the wrap to the chipped area. Make sure to fill the chipped area little by little with kokso. When you finished filling kokso lightly, leave the item in the urushi box for at least 1 day. How to clean the palette and spatula. First, wipe off the dirt on the palette with tissue. Then, scrape dirt from the palette using the spatula and oil and wipe it well with tissue. How to clean bamboo spatula. Wipe off the dirt with tissue on the bamboo spatula. Sticky dirt can be removed by polishing with sandpaper. You can also adjust the shape of the bamboo spatula for easier usability with sandpaper. Once kokso has hardened, scrape off the excess kokso with a utility knife. If you filled wider than the chipped area, it is difficult to find the right border of the chipped area. Therefore, make sure not to fill beyond the chipped area. Repeat the process, which means filling with kokso and leaving the item in the urushi box for at least 1 day, until the chipped areas are completely filled. Now, the chipped area is completely filled. Scrape off the excess kokuso with a utility knife. Cut the sandpaper into approximately 2 cm square and fold it into 3. Polish kokuso very well to completely flatten the surface. Do not push the kokuso too hard, otherwise fillings may come off from the chipped area. Polish only the surface of the kokuso with sandpaper to avoid scratching the item. Step 3. Filling small holes. Make sabi-urushi to flatten the unevenness. A fine point brush is useful to smoothen the unevenness of the border of the broken pieces and cracks. If you have already used the fine point brush before and it contains some oil, you should remove the oil completely. Place ethanol on the palette to wash the brush and wipe off the oil well with tissue before using the brush. This is not necessary for the new brush. If your item is unglazed and has a rough surface, mask the item if needed. How to make sabi-urushi. Place polishing powder on the palette using a spoon, and add water with a dropper little by little. Mix together until it becomes like mayonnaise. If you added water too much, add more polishing powder and mix again. Put raw urushi on the palette and knead together. Compared to the mixture of polishing powder and water, the raw urushi should be 60% in volume. Work quickly because sabi-urushi darkens and hardens in a short time once you apply the raw urushi. Now, sabi-urushi is made. Apply sabi-urushi on the cracked or chipped area to flatten the unevenness with a bamboo spatula or fine point brush. A fine point brush is useful for the broken pieces and cracks, or on the surface of unglazed or a rough surface. Clean the brush with oil immediately after using, because sabi-urushi hardens quickly. Apply sabi-urushi thinly on the flattened surface of kokuso, which was polished. Bamboo spatula is recommended to apply sabi-urushi on the surface of the glazed item. How to clean the palette and spatula. First, wipe off the dirt on the palette with tissue. Then, scrape dirt from the palette using the spatula and oil, and wipe it well with tissue. How to clean the fine point brush. Wash the brush well with oil on the palette, and leave ample amount of clean oil on the brush and cap. After applying sabi-urushi, leave the item in the urushi box for at least 1 day. Step 4. Painting. Prepare the fine point brush first, because we will use it after making black urushi. The fine point brush you have already used has an ample amount of oil and capped. Oil prevents urushi from hardening, so when you use the fine point brush, remove the oil first. Place ethanol on the palette and wash off the oil on the brush and wipe it off well. If the palette and spatula is too oily, wipe off well with ethanol and tissue, or wash off with dish soap and water. Polish the sabi-urushi, flattening the surface. Cut the waterproof sandpaper into approximately 2 cm square. Fold it into 3 and polish the sabi-urushi, flattening the surface. Remember to soak the paper often and wipe excess water off the item with tissue. Polish only the surface of the sabi-urushi with waterproof sandpaper to avoid scratching the item. How to make black urushi. Drop an ample amount of raw urushi onto the palette. Stir the raw urushi with a spatula until it becomes darker, as water consistency and volume is reduced. The amount of the black powder added should be less than that of the raw urushi, and mix together with the spatula. Remove the oil completely off of the fine point brush and paint the black urushi thinly on sabi urushi. Apply black urushi thinly to prevent the black urushi from shrinking. Leave the item in the urushi box for at least 1 day. How to clean Kintsugi tools. First, wipe off the dirt on the palette with tissue. Wash the brush well with oil on the palette and leave ample amount of clean oil on the brush and cap. Then, scrape dirt from the palette using the spatula and oil and wipe it well with tissue. If the palette and spatula is too oily, wipe off well with ethanol and tissue, or wash off with dish soap and water. If the surface of the black urushi is not smooth, repeat the process in step 4, which is polishing the surface with waterproof sandpaper and painting black urushi. Step 5. Finishing. You will use the fine point brush after making Bengal red urushi. So place ethanol on the palette to wash the brush first and wipe the oil off well with tissue before using the brush. Now, polish the surface of the black urushi with waterproof sandpaper. Cut the waterproof sandpaper into approximately 2 cm square, fold it into 3, and gently polish the black urushi, matting and flattening the surface. Remember to soak the paper often. Wipe excess water off the item with tissue. As you can see, only the left side we polished with waterproof sandpaper became matte. How to make Bengal red urushi. Drop an ample amount of raw urushi onto the palette. Stir the raw urushi with a spatula until it becomes darker as the water consistency and volume is reduced. The volume of the Bengal red powder added should be less than that of the raw urushi, and mix together with the spatula. Remove the oil completely off the fine point brush, and paint the Bengal red urushi very lightly on the polished black urushi, but not so light that parts of it fade. Leave it for 15 to 30 minutes. Apply the gold powder on the Bengal red urushi. Clean while waiting. First, wipe off the dirt on the palette with tissue. Wash the brush well with oil on the palette and leave ample amount of clean oil on the brush and cap. Then, scrape dirt from the palette using the spatula and oil and wipe it well with tissue. If the palette and spatula is too oily, wipe off well with ethanol and tissue, or wash off with dish soap and water. How to apply gold or silver powder. You can apply any other colored finishing powder, like silver, instead of the gold powder during the finishing process. Use separate silk balls for each powder. You can finish with black or Bengal red urushi at the final step without applying gold powder, depending on your preference. Open the paper bag of gold powder. Place some weights like coins on the corner of the paper bag to keep it open. Hold the silk ball to prevent from fluffing. Apply the ample amount of gold powder on the top. Gently apply the gold powder with the silk ball. Do not apply directly onto the top of the urushi, but instead, gently brush the gold powder over the Bengal red urushi from the side. To avoid wasting the gold powder, hold the item right above the paper bag so that the extra gold powder drops onto the original bag. Gently polish the gold powder when the powder is applied sufficiently without gaps. Collect extra powder on the item back into the original bag. Use the same silk ball for the same powder. Keep the rest of the gold or silver powder. The urushi has not yet hardened right after applying the gold or silver powder. Leave the item in the urushi box for at least 1 day. When it's completely hardened, it's done. You can apply any other colored finishing powder, like silver, instead of the gold powder during the finishing process. Special edition: How to repair cracks. Although it looks simple, it is not easy for beginners to repair cracks. Place ethanol on the palette to wash the brush first and wipe the oil off well with tissue before using the brush. Break apart if the crack is fragile enough, and refer to the pre-treatment for broken pieces. The following steps describe how to treat shallow and/or small cracks that cannot be broken apart. Place raw urushi on the palette. Apply it on both sides of cracks using a brush. A rough surface of the item can easily absorb stains. Be aware to stay in the line of the cracks when you apply urushi. Pull the cracks apart so that urushi soaks between the cracks. After 30 minutes, wipe off the excess raw urushi on the cracks. Avoid spreading the urushi in the surrounding area. Apply masking tape to close the cracks tightly. Leave the item in the urushi box for at least 1 week. Apply raw urushi on the cracks, wipe it off from the plate, and leave the item in the urushi box, as stated in Step 1 pre-treatment. Repeat this process as needed. When the raw urushi no longer soaks into the crack is already coated to prevent water, so basically it's done. You can finish repairing now, but if you like to finish with gold powder, follow the next steps. How to finish repairing cracks. Cut the sandpaper into approximately 2 cm square. Fold the sandpaper and scrape the surface of the cracks with the corner of the sandpaper. After this, follow step 3 to 5 to finish. It is not included in our TSUGUKIT, but if you want to perfect repairing cracks, you can use an electric router with a diamond-coated grinding bit to scrape into the cracks deeply. After scraping the glaze enough, follow step 3 to 5. Urushi and gold powder stay longer with this way. How to care for a repaired item. After kintsugi, the item should be treated with the same care as lacquerware. Please wash the repaired part gently and avoid scrubbing it. Do not place the item in a microwave, in dishwasher, in an oven, or over an open fire. This kintsugi tutorial video is produced by Tokyo Kintsugi Workshop, TSUGUTSUGU. Japanese best-selling Kintsugi kit, TSUGUKIT, is now on sale. online Kintsugi workshop is now open. We also have online traditional Kintsugi service, TSUGUKIT, to order artisanal Kintsugi repairs in Japan. We create new value and experience by connecting broken items, people, and traditions through Kintsugi. Please press like if this video was helpful for you and follow our channel.